Now, this is a memory that I never thought I'd be revisiting, but it's a real major learning point in my life for sure. Enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of Shanclen Shadow Productions. And golly, this one right here is one I never thought I'd be revisiting. A memory and a time in my life that I was not proud of and was definitely a dark time in my life. This video is going to be about the time I was possessed. So I'm going to be taking you back in time. This was the very early stages of when, I would have to say, before I really even started my trainings to help my brother and everything, as far as for his spiritual gifts and everything, as far as for being a medicinal man and everything. So for those of you new viewers that are out there, welcome to the video, welcome to my channel and everything. This video is going to be talking about myself, when I was a younger child, and I fell underneath the influence of a dark being. So I have to say, at this time, I was a very, very young child, and at the very early stages of my trainings when it comes to spirituality and everything, spiritual combat and stuff. So I knew of it, but my trainings and everything weren't to the advanced level of actually going against evil, going against darkness and everything at that age. And so I remember this day, I was at my house, and it was just my mother and my auntie that were there. And my siblings were also there too as well. I think they might have been at school. But it was a weird off day. It was one of those things that now that I'm older, I understand that feeling that I have is a feeling of a coming storm. And no, my knees weren't hurting, my back wasn't hurting, nothing like that. It was just one of those days that when you wake up, you just kind of know something's gonna happen, something's off. And I remember how it all started was I went outside, wanted to get some air, wanted to get some breather, went to my backyard and everything. And we had some railroad ties that lined a garden that was in the backyard. Of course, there was no flowers or anything. It was off season or anything like that. So I was sitting there, young kid. I remember I was just kind of pondering and thinking about these feelings and everything that I had. I was sitting there and I look up. And at the time, only time I would really see spirits or anything would be when I was at a ceremony, or, you know, we lived at a haunted house at a very young age. And so we would, you know, sometimes see those spirits, and especially when they say young children can see spirits a lot easier than adults can because they're closer to the purity and age of when they first came to this world from the spiritual world. So when it comes to that, I didn't hardly see spirits unless it was a very, very powerful one. Remember, I was sitting there, look up into the sky, and I see something floating there. I see someone floating there. Something floating there. And I remember, before I can even get the first thought of what is that, something, a sharp pain in the back of my head happened immediately. And I was like, immediately just everything went black. And I couldn't see. But I could still feel that my body was there. But I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. Nothing. And then I just felt this darkness come over everything of me from the inside out. And I was sitting there. I was like, what is going on? What is happening? And like I said, I was very young at the time, and I was scared. I was kind of freaking out and everything. And I heard a voice. And I remember I was in that space, and inside of that space, I've mentioned before, sometimes you go to a place, or sometimes these beings take you somewhere to where you cannot speak, you cannot think. And in this space, all I could do was observe. And I'm not going to go into detail about what this being did, but I will tell you that it caused real huge confrontations with my loved ones that I had, and lasted all day. A lot of damage was done within the family. No one was really physically hurt. A lot of emotional things kind of happened, and it was one of those things that, you know, just kind of sitting back and watching, and you see your family, you see your loved ones, everyone that you hold dear to your heart look at you in a weird way, and they just so badly that you wanted to break out and tell them, this isn't me, this isn't who I am. And it got to the point to where I was hold on, everybody. And kind of throughout the whole time, it seemed like he would pop in and out of where I was inside of my own consciousness, or wherever I was with inside of my body or my mind. And he would just torture me. And this guy, he had a face of stone, had his chin was made into a fine spear point, and inside of his mouth there were souls that were coming out of his mouth. And he didn't have eyes, where his eyes were antlers that kind of came up and it spread out like that. And inside of the antlers were eyeballs, but each one of the eyeballs could do different things. And this guy, you know, was making threats. You know, he had I guess you can say he had human skulls on his shoulders that held up his kind of a cape thing that he had. And he was telling me, he was like, you know, I'm gonna be replacing these heads right here with your family's faces and skulls. And so just hearing that, going through that, seeing everything that he did that day, there was a certain point when I heard my mother crying. That's when I said, this is enough. And where I was able to speak. I was able to get something out. I spoke to my mother. And my mother knows when something's up. I just said, Mom, help. Mom, this is something's wrong with me. And at the time, my brother was a very seasoned warrior in the spiritual realm. So she contacted him, let him know. And so he said, all right, I'll be there. Out of nowhere, not too long after, I would say about 10-15 minutes later, he punished me for being able to say those words and everything. And out of nowhere, inside of that darkness, I heard a whistle, an eagle whistle, low. And I remember seeing him look, and poof, he disappeared. He ran away. And I got consciousness. I got everything back inside of me again. And I was me again. I just busted out crying. I immediately told everybody I was sorry, everything that happened to me in that point. But I learned a really, really harsh lesson that day, you know, and I think that event that happened right there really drove me to be the strong warrior I am today. And even today, I'm not as strong as I want to be spiritually. I want that to never happen again. I never want to be manipulated by darkness or evil like that ever again. For it to come over my body like that, for it to have me hurt my loved ones, for have me do all these different things. And I'm sure when he was inside my mind and in my body, he knew my memories, everything. He got the information, everything that he needed at the time. And he was able to take that and go where he needed to go. Trigger the response that he needed from those that he needed from. And to this day, you know, some days it just kind of pops up that I think about it and everything. But it's been one of those really harsh lessons when people say like, oh, well, how do you know about this? Or, you know, like, oh, what are you talking about when it comes to spiritual protection knowledge? Or whenever we go to paranormal investigations, like, bro, that's not even, that was one of the most hardest, hurtful, you know, events that ever happened in my life, to be able to survive something like that. I had to go do some ceremonies after and everything, get some protections and cleansings and all that stuff. And for a good while, I wasn't myself for, you know, afterwards. But that drive to never let that happen again is what brought me back, you know, to my loved ones. And the love of my family, too, is essentially what brought me back to who I am, too. The teachings and foundations of, that's why I said, always knowing yourself, because so these things don't have that manipulation over you to do these things that they want, and so building up those barriers, those walls, and those foundations really help out when you go, I guess you could say, interact with spiritual beings or deities, or you go against evil or darkness. Cool. They can't manipulate you like that. But there's also 100 million, 2 million, 3 million, quadrillion different ways these things can try to get at you. So that's just one of those things that you have to make sure that you're safe. One of those things you have to strengthen up your body, especially when you go, just like how any fighter, any warrior that's out there, your MMA, UFC fighter, you got to train every part of your body, because you got to make sure that everything is strong. You got to be able to make sure that all your fingers from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet is a weapon that you can use to be able to defend yourself in your life, but also spiritually too, and mentally. Mental fortitude is with that as well. But when that happened, that's how I say one of those things that, even me at a very young age, that's happened to me before. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who have had similar situations to where you get taken over and there's nothing you can really do about it. You can't have any thoughts. You can't even have any, all these different things that just happen. And it's just like, it's easy for people to say, like who've never experienced it before, to say, oh, why didn't you just say this? Or, oh, how come you didn't just call upon so-and-so? Or, hey, how come you just do this? Like, bro, unless you're an experienced warrior, there ain't nothing you can do about it. So as I said, always look after yourself, always protect yourself, always make sure you're safe and everything out there. So if you are somebody who has dealt with a situation like this before, I hope and pray that you learn from it and you get stronger from it, and nothing but blessings and healing for you and everything that's kind of happened with that. And the memory of it fades, but take it as a learning lesson. Take it as a reason for you to get stronger as a person, to never let that happen again. At least that's what I did. And so, yeah. So thank you everybody so much for watching. Many blessings to everybody. It's kind of a darker, deeper one that kind of happened to me more so. But, this knowledge is knowledge that I would pass on to my children. This would be knowledge that I would pass on to my loved ones, future generations, to reasons why you should know yourself. Always be ready, because you'll never know when something like this ever happens to you in your life. And, there's not just physical things that are out there. There's spiritual things, too, that roam the lands. So be careful out there, everybody. Look after yourself. Look after your loved ones. And just take care and be safe. I'll go now.